peaceful passivity or armed resistance. For centuries, Christians have wrestled with two seemingly contradictory statements from Jesus Christ. In one breath, he says, "If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." But in another, he instructs his disciples, "If you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one." So, which is it? Are Christians called to be doormats, or are they permitted to defend themselves? This apparent contradiction has led to confusion and debate. But what if I told you these two statements aren't contradictory at all? What if they are two different teachings for two completely different situations? Stick around as we unpack the historical and theological context behind these famous verses and discover the surprising biblical case for self-defense. Let's start with "turn the other cheek," found in Matthew chapter 5. To understand this passage, we have to understand the culture of the time. Jesus' audience would have immediately grasped something we often miss. When Jesus says, "If anyone slaps you on the right cheek," he's describing a very specific act. In a right-handed world, to strike someone's right cheek, you would most likely use the back of your hand. This wasn't a punch to start a brawl. It was a gesture of profound contempt and insult, often used by a superior to an inferior, a master to a slave, or a Roman soldier to a Jew. So Jesus isn't talking about a life-threatening assault here. He's addressing personal insults and non-lethal persecution. His instruction is a radical call to absorb personal insults without retaliating in kind. It's about breaking the cycle of vengeance, not surrendering to violent physical harm. The Apostle Paul echoes this in Romans 12, encouraging believers to, as much as possible, live at peace with everyone and not seek revenge. Now let's look at Luke 22, where Jesus tells his disciples to buy a sword. This happens right before his arrest and crucifixion. Jesus asks them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?" They replied, "Nothing." Then he says, "But now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one." Some have argued this is a metaphor for the sword of the Spirit, but that interpretation doesn't hold up in the context of the passage. Jesus mentions the sword in the same breath as a literal purse and bag. It wouldn't make sense to sell a physical cloak to buy a metaphorical sword. Jesus was giving his followers practical advice. He was warning them that the world was about to become a much more hostile place for them. His arrest and crucifixion would mark a turning point, and they would need to be prepared to defend themselves from real, physical threats. The idea of self-defense isn't new to the New Testament. The Old Testament law, in Exodus 22, makes a provision for the use of lethal force to defend one's home against a thief at night. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, the workers carried a sword in one hand while they worked with the other, ready to defend their families and their city. Throughout history, many prominent Christian thinkers have affirmed the right to self-defense. Reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin supported the idea of a just war, which includes the right of individuals to defend themselves. The medieval theologian Thomas Aquinas argued that self-defense is lawful, but it should be done with moderation and without the primary intention of killing. C.S. Lewis, the beloved author of the Chronicles of Narnia, argued that Jesus' teaching about turning the other cheek was about the frictions of daily life, not life-and-death situations. Theologian Norman Geisler put it this way: "To permit murder when one could have prevented it is morally wrong. A man who refuses to protect his wife and children against a violent intruder fails them morally." So how do we put it all together? It's simple. Turn the other cheek and buy a sword are not in conflict because they are addressing two completely different scenarios. Turn the other cheek is the Christian's response to personal insults and non-lethal persecution. It's about humility and refusing to be drawn into a cycle of retaliation. Buy a sword is a practical instruction for a world where real, life-threatening danger exists. It affirms the right of individuals to protect themselves and their loved ones from physical harm. But what about when Peter used his sword in the Garden of Gethsemane? Jesus rebuked him, saying, "All who draw the sword will die by the sword." In that specific moment, Peter was interfering with God's divine plan. Jesus' arrest was necessary for the salvation of humanity. His rebuke of Peter wasn't a condemnation of all self-defense, but a specific correction in a unique situation. The verdict: Jesus calls his followers to absorb personal insults, but he also affirms their right to protect themselves and their families from lethal force. So, turn the other cheek versus by a sword isn't a contradiction, but a guide for Christian ethics in a fallen world. It's a call to be humble in the face of insults and courageous in the face of danger. What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with this interpretation? Let me know in the comments below. This is a vital conversation for anyone seeking to understand the Bible's take on violence and self-defense. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. And if you know someone who would benefit from this discussion, please share it with them. Thanks for watching. God bless and be excellent to each other.